Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Purpose People podcast. Today, we've got Gideon from Customer IQ, and we've just moved the whole setup around today, so it's a little bit uncomfortable. But welcome, Gideon. Thanks for joining us on the sofa.
Thanks for having me. I like this setup.
It's all right, isn't it?
We can stare at each other
in silence and break down in tears. So, just tell us a little bit about your day-to-day, your business, what you actually do.
So I'm a market researcher. I feel sometimes I say that and it feels like I've stepped out of the closet. I think it's not necessarily, maybe this is my own hang up, but it doesn't feel like it's one of those careers that people probably, dream about when they're a small child. And neither did I. I think a lot of people fall into it almost accidentally. I sort of went in more purposefully than that. I did some traveling after uni. I got a degree in geography. I'm like, what can I do? I went along. I remember going to an interview, a kind of group grad kind of interview, and it was for a waste management company. And there were loads and loads of people there for one job. Part of the training was like going out on the bins and doing 3 months of biffa bins, and I didn't get the job, so I came away from that thinking, okay, I couldn't get that job. So what job can I get? So I went, I looked into, I did my research in actual facts, and I looked into what kind of career I could do with a degree in geography. I guess I had a kind of curious nature. So research kind of ticked the boxes, and then I basically, before the days of email or early days of email, I sent my CV off to loads of companies, spammed them as much as I could, and I managed to get onto a grad scheme that way, and that's sort of stayed with it really.
So the grad scheme that you went on, was that in sort of like data and stuff, or was
it was a mixture. If it was at the time, it was a company called BMRB, which doesn't really exist anymore. The brand kind of got submerged into a company called Kantar, which is now one of the biggest research companies in the world, but it was a renowned kind of grad scheme at the time. And you got to go around different departments. So you did a bit of social research, did a bit of kind of retail, a bit of media research, and it was the media side that I really fell in love with a little bit, and that's what I pursued. So I did a sort of 3.5 years there, and I always saw that as a bit of an apprenticeship really, and sort of you learn the skills, you learn the trade, and then I went off thinking, the grass is much greener on the client side of the fence, where research is really used, and insights built into every decision that's made, and it wasn't quite like that. But I spent time at Channel 5. And then I moved to the BBC, and then this is up to about 2010, and a bit like you actually, got a bit had been in London for 10 years, and had crikey, how many? 2 small children, and just thought actually there's probably a bit more to living than being stuck in London, not really being able to afford to enjoy London too much. So my wife's from the West Country. Her family lived just outside Bath, so we were like, let's head that way. So we sort of checked out a few places.
Seems quite a good move actually. A lot of people that have left London and come to the West Country, because there is that standard of living change, because everything's
And we thought we were being really pioneering, because you get in your wagon and you go past Maidenhead. And loads of people stop off at Maidenhead, don't they? You go to Reading. Now let's keep going. And actually, you're right. When we landed in Bath, or just outside Bath, I reckon half the people we've met since have all done the same thing. So and more so now, I think, with lockdown, it's been.
Oh, Bristol's another one, isn't it? So Bristol and Bath, a lot of people, because it's the end of the M4, or at the end of the train line, so to speak. Those are the two sort of where people have moved out and maybe commute in or not anymore.
Yeah, so then I set up my own business not long after moving to Bath, and that was a kind of freelance contract business, doing much the sort of same thing as had been doing. So I worked at some big kind of corporate companies, and then I think I was looking for, I don't know what I was looking for. What was I trying to do with it, and that kind of made me really sort of reflect, I guess, and think, actually, what do I want to do with my business? And I wanted to help smaller businesses, so as someone that had kind of good experience, good research skills, a bit of a thing about how important it is to do research, to help businesses make decisions, to get feedback on how they're doing and how they can improve. I didn't see an obvious way of being able to deliver that to small businesses, because apart from anything else, research is expensive. And that whole David and Goliath thing really got me. That was I'm the youngest of three brothers. Fairness is a feature in my life, or unfairness. It depends who you talk to, me or my older brothers. But that became a thing and sort of drove me, and that evolved. Small businesses is tough. They don't necessarily have. It's not just the money, actually. It's like they just don't have the appreciation, or you have to sell the concept of why you would do research.
I think as I got older, I realised, certainly in business, most small business owners, including me or whoever, you make a lot of decisions at pace, want to move forward, and research is almost the thing you do afterwards when it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, that's right, and I think people are, and so I've evolved that now into working with startups.
Yeah.
Because I think there is much more of an obvious need there when you're creating something new. 100%. You need to validate an idea, or you need to test out an idea, and I think there's a lot more willingness to engage with research and data.
Definitely, I think what's happened is, certainly with the entrepreneurial stuff and the different courses and that whole process of validation. And even when you get told that, you're like, oh, it's going to take me hours, I've got to do all this research, whatever. And then knowing that there's other people there that can help you do that, I think is great. Because at the time, it's almost like, I've got to do all that myself.
Yeah.
I've got to go on Google, and I've got to search. And it's just slowing you up.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're thinking, they almost move forward with ignorance is better than actually doing the research, even though long term it's painful.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And I think sometimes there isn't really anyone else. Well, I know of one other organization that is helping startups from a research perspective, and of course, any decent research agency is going to help them. But I think what I've learned is you need to adapt what you do. It's not a case of just offering the same services to a startup business as you would to a corporate, because it just doesn't work. So you need to be able to adapt and develop different ways of delivering that service. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. That's really exciting. That's sort of motivating. But I think there's also something around people almost fear what the feedback might be. And I would put myself in that category. It's interesting. So as part of, when I went through the NatWest Accelerator, one of the coaches there kind of called me out for that, because I was running a business. I was, suggesting to people that they should be collecting feedback, that feedback was a really useful tool to be able to drive their business forward. And I wasn't doing that myself. So Kerry was like, why is that? How are you not doing it yourself? And we worked out pretty quickly that I was actually, like many other people, I was a bit afraid about what the feedback would be, because I didn't want to hear the bad news. I only wanted to hear good news. And what if they said that they didn't like it? That would be devastating. And actually, that is the point of it. You've got to hear the good and the bad, and that's how you develop. And that whole growth mindset thing is, again, I came into that kind of late in life, but thanks to the NatWest Accelerator and humans since then, I've been able to kind of rewire myself a little bit to thinking more about the opportunity that sort of a growth mindset presents.
It's an interesting one, because I think in that pressure, because I think there was a whole culture of pressure to scale at all costs. And in that scaling at all costs, it's almost like, well, I've got to find the right people, I've got to hire people, I've got to make sales, I've got to do this. And the research thing was left to the bottom. And I think what the biggest thing that I realized was the assumption part. And it was like, we make a lot of decisions based, we got an idea, we think it's a great idea, but we assume everyone wants to buy it. And I remember seeing one person on the course, they spent 6 months building a website. Their whole time was 6 months building the website. They'd done nothing else. Yet they could have outsourced the research to see what, if they were building, would be actually viable and buyable. And I don't think they even got that far. They literally just, didn't didn't launch. It was just like, oh wow, how long is this person? So they got so tied up in features and building and second guessing what someone new might want or whatever. They literally didn't ask the audience if they wanted to buy this product or not.
I think that's a common thing, isn't it? And you can see why, right? Because that's the exciting bit, isn't it? Build it and they will come. That is, I'm sure in some cases, and then you see the successful stories of where that's happened. Big brands that have gone with an idea and very passionate about their idea, and it works. But I don't think that is necessarily.
Oh, it's definitely an exception.
Yeah.
Definitely an exception. I think you see, you'll see ads like going, how I started my business and now in 6 months I turned £9 million a month on it, and I'll show you how in 6 steps. Well, what you don't realize is that they're making their money telling you that story. So you're paying them to tell you how they did it, but their actual business model was you paying them. So they really technically haven't done it, but the fact that they've convinced you that they know got all the answers to do it means that they are making it, but they're making it off the back of people like you going, oh, I want that as well.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for that. I must admit, I do. I think you know who you are, don't you? By the adverts that get served to you on YouTube, and those are that I get a lot of those.
and then you go into comparative thing, going, oh, maybe I'm just nowhere near, or I'm missing something here, or whatever else. But I realised that as I done a few of these things, I realised that's our whole model in itself. And actually, the person is the guru, makes the money out of it, but then ultimately, that's how they make their money. They don't have anything else that they do. Yeah. That's how they're making their money and growing their business. So, great marketing, but not necessarily. It's almost like a missell. You know what I mean? And how
you've got to be very careful about. I think I've fallen foul of, buying into things that perhaps overpromised, under-delivered. But I think it's as a small business owner myself, it's a journey you go on, isn't it? And I find that you learn, you get to the right conclusion. It just takes a long time, you know. Whereas I think with support and help, you can get to that. You can get to the right conclusion, more quickly.
Yeah, it's having enough people, and I talk about Matthew Syed's book, which is called Rebel Ideas, which is all about collective intelligence. And I think that's kind of where you're coming from, is that you're creating the data around certain things to come to a much rounder position. So
definitely. I think it's like it's another tool in the armory, isn't it, to make a decision. And I think it's wrong to assume that research makes decisions for you. It doesn't, it's just like another voice in the room. So
it's an informed decision then you make.
Yeah. And you shouldn't, I don't think, if we talk about, we might think about businesses that are data driven versus data led. And I feel like there is a bit of a nuance between those two, and actually be driven by data, let data help you make decisions, but don't be led by it. So don't let the data make the decisions. There's an example I keep in my head of, which is probably a bad one, but it's one that pops up, which is Netflix. And in the early days of Netflix, I read an article about how they had commissioned loads of Adam Sandler movies. And that was based on the fact that lots of people were watching Adam Sandler movies. And, you could argue either way that was a good decision or not. But I mean, he's a very popular guy. But I think at that point he wasn't, he was sort of...
He was on a bit of a slide.
He was a bit of an ebb in his career, yeah. So maybe that's not the right example. But I think the point is, don't let the data make the decision for you. It's your decision. If you're a business owner or a marketing director or a product manager, you make the decision. You just have, data is a different voice, a different person in the room.
Yeah, I think so. And I think for me, data can be presented in many different ways to tell a story. And we saw that, over the years with COVID, and we've seen it with climate and stuff like that. And we're getting to a point now we're almost becoming a little bit more suspicious of data. Whereas before it was like, this is unquestionable. And now it's like, well, hang on a minute. You're saying this, which makes sense here, but what about taking it out a bit further and going, oh, hang on. So I think you need data experts, I think, nowadays, who can actually say, no, we won't just focus on one source. We'll look at 7 sources and then come back to you. Because that's the other thing. We do our own research and we do like one website and that's it then.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And we are inundated with data, as business owners. We have access to so much data, and you don't know what to do with it. You don't know how to make sense of it. And that's what somebody like me or my equivalent would be able to do, is to sort of understand and digest that and help you kind of interpret it in a way that helps your business.
Yeah.
And I think you made a point about, widening it out. And I think context is something that is crucial, and it is something that we forget. Take the example of a startup. They might want to go and talk to customers about their idea, which is great. You encourage them to do that, but actually what you should be doing is talking to them about them and the problems that they have, and not about the solution that you've got. There's a really good book you'll have come across, the Mom Test.
No.
It's Mom because it's an American book. Well, let's call it the Mum Test. So the idea is, you shouldn't go to your friends and family and say, hey, I've got a really good idea for a business, because they're just going to go, yeah, that sounds amazing. You're going to be the next whoever.
Yeah.
But they're not going to give you the honest answer. They're going to give you the answer that you're looking for.
Or they say the opposite. No, it's a rubbish idea.
Yeah.
And you just give up.
Yeah. My siblings might do that. But the idea is, you take a step back and you think about, that if you're talking to somebody potentially about what your solution might be, you bring it right back and you talk to them about their lives and what problem that, validate the problem as opposed to validating your solution.
And that's the thing I learned, like in the whole entrepreneurial thing with NatWest and things like this, was that whole focus on the problem, not just the solution. And certainly growing up, being more wired to be the problem solver. And often that's how most people get promoted, is solving problems, right? Taking them away from the upline or the lead or whatever, and you're just fixing a whole load of stuff. But it's actually to spend more time around the problem, because by looking at the problem, there are multiple ways to solve it. It's not just one way. You can solve it, but there's multiple ways, which is the best for the current.
Yeah.
And I think I'd probably grown up a little bit around there's one way to solve it, and I found it, right? Let's just get on and do it. I mean, I've learned that now, is that look at the problem, but there are many ways to solve it. But what is the right way? Because there are other limiting factors: time, budget, location, history in the market, maybe prices of materials. All of a sudden, that they also contribute, which is the need for research to help making a much rounder decision. Rather than go, I see that, I'm going to double down on it, and hopefully it'll be the case. It's like, if you're going to open a coffee shop, let's say out here, so we live in the country, for example. So if you open a coffee shop, probably you open a coffee shop here doing the standard 9 to 5 o'clock, and you'd shut and it'd be done. But if you have a coffee shop in Bristol, for example, there's coffee shops everywhere. So what makes you unique? And I think it might have changed now, but certainly at the time, the only coffee shop that was open till late was the Boston Tea Party on Park Street. And that was open to 8 o'clock. So if ever we used to live up in Clifton, we'd go for a walk and want coffee, it's either go to a hotel or go to Boston Tea Party. So then if someone was going to open a coffee shop, my advice would be, open it up so it's open in the evening, because there is a demand for people, because you'll find a lot of people in hotels having tea and coffee in the evening because they don't want to go to a bar, for example. And so that's the data that I have, because I'm experiencing it, but that then gets communicated with the assumption, we just put another coffee shop 9 to 5. It didn't work.
Yeah. And I was listening to, was it Robin you had on a few episodes ago?
Yeah.
Who was talking about
Robin
something.
Waite.
Yeah, Robin Waite. He was talking about something similar about, just because somebody else has done something and they look successful, it might be that they're really struggling and their business model is not great. So why would you just replicate the same thing on the assumption that they're doing it, so it must be good?
Yeah.
And that's another example of that, isn't it? You should start unpack it. That idea of first principles, where you just break everything down into its tiniest.
Well, it's just understanding the audience. So I didn't know that. I think it was up in Clifton and the surrounding areas. I think the age was 25 to 35. It's a dense population of 25. It's like 70% of people live there are 25 to 35. And then you think about it, because you don't normally think about it. You think about it and you go, okay, so then where would they go after that? If you're not going to have like a big family restaurant, because they just want to grab something to eat, have fun with their friends, whatever else, meet people. And then you find out, well, most of those people then can't afford to buy a house in Clifton, so they go to Porter's Head. So then you started to see a lot of the restaurants that are in Bristol, where a bit more family begin to move out to the surrounding areas, because they know the families live there, not Clifton. And I've seen the evidence of that. So there was Carluccio's, which launched up in Clifton. It failed.
Did it?
Yeah. You had, who was it? Jamie Oliver up in Clifton.
Yeah.
Had all these deals, so they would do Kids Eat for Free way before everybody else was doing it, but it failed. Why? Because if they'd done the research for the people, they'd realise the families don't live there.
No, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you think Jamie Oliver as a brand couldn't fail.
Yeah.
Such a success on the TV and his books. It's an obvious step then is to open a chain of restaurants.
But if you wanted to be trendy, if you live in Bristol, if you want to be trendy, get a restaurant in Clifton. But the reality is the people that you're serving, it'd probably been better for him to open up in Westbury.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And so that's where I see those big cataclysmic mistakes are made because they're not doing their research of the audience.
Yeah.
And that information is publicly available. You could literally just go around the cities and where are all the families, and then you go,
and like you say, back to the earlier what you were saying, it takes a little bit of time to maybe find that data and spend a bit, but of course it potentially saves you your business from failing, or it saves you thousands of pounds of investment that, or in that case maybe millions. But I think it's the way of the lean startup model is a very interesting and effective one, isn't it? The whole learn, measure, grow,
Measure, learn, grow.
I can't remember.
or what sticks out for me, that's the whole Zappos, how he started the business there.
Yeah.
Buying a pair of trainers from a shop, going home, taking a picture, sticking it online and selling it, and saying, you can sell shoes online. And at the time, no one had done that. They wanted to try them on.
Yeah, this whole idea of experimentation is, and it's funny because I don't think I don't feel like that's spread beyond the startup world particularly. No. You've got a lot of corporates who are trying to innovate and failing because they're building these huge they're building these big products, and before they put them out to market, they're just doomed to fail because they've got it wrong, for some probably straightforward reason.
So I remember years ago, Zurich, they had a thing called Zurich Bank that they launched, and it was like the Apple of bank accounts, and everything was always shot white, stark white backgrounds. Back then it was like Audi TTs parked up or whatever else, and the marketing looked slick and looked quite well, but again it failed. In the end it failed because they just couldn't get the customers or knew where those customers were, so they put all this expense or whatever else, but again I believe it was definitely not spending enough time on who's going to bank there. If you're going to have someone who's high net worth in there, what's the advantage for them? You've got to have an amazing savings plan because they're ideally high net worth's got savings and looking for investments and not just going to use your bank account. So it's just quite interesting having freelanced and worked around, because I used to do a bit of freelance work there, is that you can see how it goes wrong without the research. And I think now falling into that world of entrepreneurship, I really recognize the power of studying it out, reading it out, looking, getting different viewpoints. Even in the news, we were talking earlier, like even the news, what you see on television, do some research yourself, but also make sure those research outlets are credible as well.
Yeah.
Before you, because you can make, as I said, you could think the earth is flat if you don't actually look at the resources and what's out there.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting how I've seen even the aspect of news and data, people don't trust as much now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other elephant in the room about research particularly is, you should never ask people what they want, right? Because they don't know. And you mentioned Apple earlier, and it seems like Apple as a brand can just launch new products and doesn't, people want them. Doesn't matter what they are. The Vision Pro, whatever, that's $3,000, is it? $3,500?
Yeah.
They know they're going to sell it. But and the other thing that comes to mind there is Henry Ford saying, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they'd have just said faster horses. And that's a really easy way to dismiss, the voice of the customer research. But I think on both of those points, I've seen a video of Steve Jobs launching the iPod, and he spends a good 5-10 minutes basically running through his market research, his we looked at all the different kind of platforms that you can listen to music on. And the CD Walkman, you can only have like X number of songs in your pocket, and he goes through every single available device and sort of works out what's wrong with it before they develop the iPod. And to the quote on Henry Ford about faster horses, for me, if you went and briefed a team of designers and said, look, people want faster horses, that's a great jumping off point to develop something like the car, because of course people want faster horses. That's all they can articulate, that my horse isn't quick enough to get me from here to there, and I need to sell my stuff, and I live 100 miles away from where I'm selling it, and I need to get there quickly, right? Well, you wouldn't just breed racehorses, would you? You'd think more widely about that. So I think faster horses for me is a brilliant creative brief, starting off.
Yeah,
point.
It's an interesting one because there's a couple of things there. So many years ago, we went to the launch of the Creative Apprenticeships in Apple in London, and we were taken behind, so the big flagship store, we were taken upstairs into their offices, and there's a Mac everywhere. It's amazing. And that question come up. So how do we know what products are going to sell? And everyone's like, yeah, exactly. How do we know? I said, because we employ kids. Everyone's like, oh. He said, we employ like 15, 16-year-old kids, and our question to them is, what do you want in your bedroom? Now, there might be some strange stuff that they want, but the funniest things are, they said, like with the iPod, the question come back, what do you want? And they said, wouldn't it be great if we had all our records on one device? And that came out of those conversations because we're getting fed up with taking them off, putting them on, and collecting them. Wouldn't it be great if I'm out and about, I've got them all rather than just one? We're showing our age a little bit, but you just have like a CD, didn't you? Or you had your cassette, but it'd be of one. And the big thing was that I could have my whole record collection in my pocket. Oh my gosh, isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
And so they said that's how they were just asking the younger generation of what they want up front. So the vision goggles or whatever, they don't give us stuff for me and you want it or not, because ultimately they're talking to the young kids that spend most of their time online and play and say, what would you want? It'd be really cool if I could put this and just be in this immersive atmosphere. Because what I saw with the ads that made me laugh was did you see the ads with the Vision Pro?
No, I don't think I did.
Had this dad at the kitchen. So he's at the kitchen making dinner and he's got this Vision Pro on. And then he sits down and the commentary is like, and then you can capture a moment with your kids, like to take a picture. And then they show him and it just looks like he's trapped. It's almost like, to the kids must be looking like, how can we get dad out of this contraption? And it was like, that for me looked really odd. Do you know what I mean? They're trying to like, and it's like, no. But to a kid that's, maybe playing games in his bedroom or whatever, he puts it on, it's more immersive. I don't think it's a lifestyle thing. And maybe that's where they get it wrong, or who knows, we'll all be wearing them.
Yeah, I guess you've got to be able to market these things properly, haven't you, or effectively.
And I wasn't quite convinced with the marketing. I get the idea, but I wasn't sure that people want to wear this heavy headset for a long period of time. But we'll see. I might be wrong.
Should have tested that creative out a bit more thoroughly.
Yeah, but it just looked like he looked trapped.
Yeah.
And that was my concern with it. It was like, that doesn't look like a good lifestyle product. Whereas I think Google Glass is like, it's part of you, but not part of you. You put the glasses on and everyone's used to people wearing glasses. And they're quite light and you can put them down. I don't know where that's gone now, whether they've
Facebook. Didn't Facebook have a pair of Ray-Bans as well that you could do like selfies through? And I mean, you've got to experiment with these things, right? You can't
Ray-Ban's got the headset in the things, haven't they?
You can't just expect everything to work, right? And if you've got to have failure, haven't you, to learn what works?
Which goes to customer research again. And part of that is building small, testing and breaking and testing and breaking to see if the data that you got isn't based on assumption, if it actually works. So it's quite cool.
But it's making sure you're speaking to the right people and, the target that you're looking to sell to or to work with. Yeah, definitely. It's it isn't rocket science at the end of the day. It's a lot of it's common sense.
Yeah.
And you need, by the time this goes out, I'm hopefully will have launched a bit of a coaching offer as well. So,
okay, cool.
Sort of in accepting that a lot of founders will be doing their own research, trying to help them along that journey to make sure that what the output is better, as good as it can be,
Yeah, and I think for me that leads us nicely into the next question, which I'm sure you're like, where does AI fit into it?
Gosh,
because I've started playing with ChatGPT as a research tool, almost like a Q&A or something.
Yeah.
But there are certain things or prompts or whatever I'm starting to realize it's quite limited.
Yeah,
that might be because I've got to pay more money for it or whatever. But I don't think the data's amazing. It's okay in certain areas, it's good, but you can get the sources and go and find out more information yourself and more recent information.
Yeah.
But I don't think people have been taught enough around prompts and how to get the best out of it. But certainly from a political side of things, it's very slanted. If you test it and play with it, and you can do race, you can do politics, you then go, you know where it's coming from, so to speak, which then goes, well, that's quite a narrow view then.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm not, of course, I'm not an expert in any of that, but I think, we're all going to have to be adapting to it. But I think the point you make is really interesting about representation. I remember a few years ago in my world, big data was a huge buzzword, and everyone was talking about big data and how you don't need to kind of ask people questions because it's all there in the data. And actually, you've got to be really careful about how representative that data is, and who it's not representative of. Who you're missing out when you're making those decisions. And there's all sorts of things now, aren't there? Like women's football, and there's a lack of research into that, and how women footballers, how their bodies have different needs and work differently to men's, not just menstrual cycles, but everything, and how it should be adapted to accommodate. And there isn't any data. I think it was Karen Carney was on the news at the weekend just saying there isn't any research. There's no data to back this up. We just, they might be getting serious injuries that could be avoided because of their physiology is different, and they're just.
It's an interesting one because it's like the whole football with the head in the footballs back in the day. So now I think under 11s aren't allowed to head footballs anymore. And they worked out through the data, that much of the World Cup winning team in 1966 all suffered with mental illness or Alzheimer's or, a brain-related injury that was triggered from the result of heading what was the equivalent of concrete. Because when that ball gets wet and head that, I think it was... Astor, so Jeff Astor. I think he was made quite famous in sort of like the 90s around football, and his daughter's taken it up as a challenge to push it. So the data's not there, but the data is now. Yeah, and which is what we're finding in rugby as well. Yeah. Rugby are going, look at concussion, and it's a big deal. And it was like, man up, chuck some water on you, let's get going. You can only do that for so long because our bodies aren't really made to smash heads like constantly. Maybe there is a reason they're called wimps, but maybe there is a reason why the NFL guys have got pads and helmets and stuff. But even that, NFL, the famous film with Concussion, with Will Smith telling the story about American footballers launching headfirst with their helmets causes problems.
Yeah, I can imagine on your neck.
I think the average age, the stats are saying on that the average career in NFL is 3 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So you'll get some people that play 10, 15 years, but on average it's 3 years.
Wow.
You're sort of because it is so demanding as a sport,
Yeah.
Yeah. So with AI, for example, then, would you have any advice to get the best out of it from the data?
Yeah, the kind of, I feel like I'm not, I'm either I'm not early adopter. I'm early mainstream to some of this stuff. So there'll be other people that are obviously spending a lot more time and have experience of this stuff. But for me, I see it as a really good kind of research assistant. Yeah. So in the way that you were describing, ask it questions, give it good prompts to get back quickly. That's the key point, isn't it? It works in seconds. Yeah. To come back with stuff that maybe gets elevates your knowledge to a certain degree, but then maybe you go off and find specific sources of information that kind of really give you that extra bit, because I think it is by its nature, Chat GPT or Bard or whatever you use, is going to come back with it's sort of, for me it feels like it's sort of just kind of averaging out everything it's learned. It's not, it can be a little bit banal, in what it comes back with. Yeah. And also, from what I understand, when it doesn't know the answer, it will just make it up, and it will make it up in such a confident way that it's convincing. So,
that's why I always ask the sources. You see, so one of the prompts is, so where did you get that from? Yeah. And then it'll give you a website link, and you'll go to the website link, and you go, okay, now I can start to see this is real. So that for me, as you said, I like it as a bounce back tool when I'm researching on a subject that I might not know too much about. Yeah. But then the important thing is that when you have all that data, you still got to make your own take on it, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. It will only get you so far, I guess. But it's evolving, isn't it? There's, I'm. Who knows if, in 2 years' time, if anyone's going to be sat here doing this, or if we'll just be, generative podcasts of people having conversations.
Yeah.
It's. I hope we don't lose the human side of ourselves.
I don't think we will. I think the thing with AI is to know that it's everything of stuff that's been before. It can't predict the future, so to speak. And I think, different thoughts, different ways of looking at life, different principles, different frameworks. There's definitely room for that, because there was always room for innovation and thinking differently.
Yeah.
I think the key thing for my thing of AI is, certainly within the research space, it's a great assistant.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to put it. It's an assistant that helps people, but it's not the be all and end all. And I think, if you look at all these tools, I remember as a designer being introduced to a Mac, and you're like, oh, it's going to solve all my problems. And, the reality is concepts and ideas come from pen and paper first, or should do. Don't allow the Mac to solve your problem. And I remember someone saying, the Mac is a tool, just like a pen, just like a piece of paper. And when being at college, everyone was using it as the final solution. So you'll do a beautiful layout or whatever and go, well, why did you do that? Well, it looks nice. And it's that wasn't good enough, and it's like, well, no, think about it again, think about the audience, think about the headline, and then redesign it. Now put the two, oh yeah, it looks better because there's an idea at its core, rather than just using it as a tool to present something.
Yeah. And I still have hope that the best ideas come from a human brain.
I think so.
I'd like to think.
I think so. Well, Gideon, how do people get in touch with you, like connect with you?
Well, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I think over the years, I've looked for this sort of silver bullet of how to generate leads and tried various things. And, there isn't a silver bullet, as it turns out. But whatever you do, it works. So send enough emails, you get enough work back. And I found, well, if I'm going to spend doing something, why don't I do something I enjoy? So I quite enjoy, engaging with people on social media, and LinkedIn is, the business version of that, isn't it? So
it's a great tool.
It's really, really good for me. I find it sort of gets me known. You can have a point of view. So I'm on that a lot. Obviously got a website, customer-iq.com, which might get a few more people looking at it as a result of this. The traffic. No,
I've looked at it because you've got different packages for different levels of where people are at, and I think that's what's good about going there. You got like the entry level. You got someone that's looking to go for a large amount of money that need more research.
Yeah, and then trying to cater for different types of startup.
Yeah,
from bootstrap through to sort of more funded. And I've put the pricing on there. I think it's good these days to be quite transparent about how much you charge.
No. I think for me, it's very clear, I've had a look or whatever. But if you want to dip your toe into sort of learning about customer research or taking that part of your project and outsourcing it, I think it'd be great to have a conversation with you and get people.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to do that with anyone who's even thinking about it. And it may not be right now. It might be 6 months, a year's time, but it's good to get that initial conversation in now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
I'm sure we'll get you back, but it's been fun. So thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks.
See you soon. Cheers. Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Purpose People podcast. You can obviously see us on YouTube, where you can see our wonderful setting here that we film every time we do a podcast. But you can also listen to us just in your ears on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and Google. Please like and subscribe to YouTube, and please leave a review on our podcast. It really helps us get the message out that can help people live a life on purpose, for purpose. We want to help you make purpose a priority.